The air in my son Daniel's suburban Denver home turned cold as my daughter-in-law, Karen Wheeler, leaned across the polished mahogany dining table, her eyes glinting with disdain. "You raised him to be weak," she spat, her voice loud enough for the neighbors to hear through the open window. "A spineless man who can't keep up with my ambitions." I, Eleanor Brooks, a retired art teacher in my late 70s, felt the words slice through me, each syllable a betrayal of the decades I'd poured into raising Daniel alone after his father's long hours as an engineer. My husband, George, Brooks 75 and weathered from years of quiet loyalty, sat rigid beside me, his knuckles white around his coffee mug, silent as Karen's accusation echoed. I nodded, my face a mask of calm, and walked out, clutching the velvet ring box, our family's heirloom from George's proposal under a Nebraska oak tree, 50 years ago, its weight anchoring my resolve. The sting wasn't just Karen's words, it was the scene moments earlier, when she'd handed my late mother's hand-painted ceramic vase, a treasure I'd gifted Daniel for his wedding, to her sister as a better fit for their modern decor. The room filled with Daniel's in-laws, our neighbors, and my own son watched in silence, no one defending the symbol of my sacrifices. George's eyes met mine, pained but passive, his silence a second wound. I'd overheard Karen earlier that day, her voice smug through the kitchen's smart speaker, plotting with a friend to paint me as a frail, outdated relic to the family, stripping me of influence. Her accusation at the table wasn't a spontaneous jab, it was a calculated move to erase me from Daniel's life, to sever the bond I'd nurtured through sleepless nights and endless encouragement. As I stepped onto the porch, the crisp Colorado evening biting my skin, my heart churned with a mix of rage and grief. The ring box, soft under my fingers, held memories of George's vows, of promises we'd kept through hardship. Karen's words burned because they struck at my deepest fear, that my life's work raising Daniel to be kind, thoughtful, strong in his own way was invisible, dismissed as weakness by a woman who valued flash over substance. George's inaction gnawed at me too. His love was steady, but his reluctance to confront Karen left me feeling alone. I'd taught art for 30 years, guiding students to see beauty in the ordinary, yet here I was, unseen in my own family. The betrayal wasn't just Karen's, it was Daniel's silence, the room's indifference, the casual discarding of my mother's vase. I paused under the porch light, the ring box a quiet rebellion in my hand. Karen didn't know I'd heard her scheme, didn't know I'd caught the venom in her voice as she planned to convince Daniel and his cousins I was losing my grip, too old to matter. Her words at the table were a performance, a public shaming to cement her control. My chest tightened, not just from anger but from the ache of being sidelined. My sacrifices, nights spent sketching with Daniel, saving for his college, cheering at his games, reduced to a punchline. I thought of the community art gallery where I'd taught, where my students' paintings still hung, a testament to my legacy. Karen wanted to erase that too, to paint me as a relic in a world she deemed modern. George followed me outside, his footsteps heavy. "Eleanor, don't let her get to you," he said, his voice low, but I saw the hesitation in his eyes, the fear of rocking the boat. I wanted to scream, to demand he stand up for me, but I swallowed it, knowing this fight was mine to start. My years as an art teacher had taught me to observe, to find patterns in chaos, and I saw Karen's now. Her charm masked a need to dominate, to reshape our family around her vision. The vase's dismissal wasn't a whim, it was a message, a public declaration that my values, my history, didn't belong. I recalled a moment from Daniel's wedding, when Karen's smile faltered as I gave her the vase, her eyes cold as if my gift was an insult. Was it jealousy of my bond with Daniel, or something deeper? I walked to our car, the ring box tucked in my coat, my mind racing. Karen's plan to discredit me wasn't just personal, it was a campaign to isolate me, to make Daniel see me as a burden. The smart speaker's accidental recording replayed in my head, her laughing about handling me, ensuring I'd have no say in their lives. My fingers brushed the ring box, its velvet worn but unbroken, like me. I'd spent years teaching students to stand tall, to create boldly, yet here I was, doubted by my own son. The pain of his silence, of George's hesitation, mingled with a growing resolve. I wasn't weak, and I wouldn't let Karen rewrite my story. Back home in our Aurora bungalow, I sat at my easel, the blank canvas mocking my turmoil. George hovered nearby, offering tea, his way of apologizing without words. I loved him, but his passivity stung, reminding me of the times I'd carried our family alone. The ring box sat on my desk, a symbol of the promises we'd kept, the life we'd built. Karen's betrayal was a theft not of money, but of my place, my voice. I opened my tablet, checking the family's Google Photos album, a digital archive I'd curated for Daniel. Something felt off. Photos of me were missing, replaced by Karen's curated shots of her perfect life. My heart sank, but my artist's eye sharpened. This wasn't a glitch, it was deliberate. I called Martha Evans, my old friend and a retired lawyer with a mind like a steel trap. Her voice was steady as I recounted the dinner. The vase, Karen's words. "She's trying to erase you, Eleanor," Martha said, her tone fierce. "But you're not invisible." Her words lit a spark. I thought of my students, how I'd taught them to fight for their art, their truth. Karen underestimated me, but I'd learned to see through facades. The ring box, still in my hand, felt heavier now, a reminder of what I stood to lose and what I'd fight to protect. I wasn't just fighting for myself, but for the legacy I'd built, for the love I'd poured into Daniel, for the vows George and I still held. As I stared at the canvas, a plan took shape. Karen thought she could paint me out of the picture, but I'd spent a lifetime teaching others to create, to endure. I'd use that same clarity now, not to destroy, but to reclaim. The pain of Daniel's silence, of George's hesitation, fueled me. I'd show Karen that my strength wasn't weakness, that my values weren't outdated. The ring box, warm in my palm, was my anchor, a promise to myself. I'd fight, not with shouts, but with the quiet precision of an artist who knows every stroke matters. I swiped open my tablet in the quiet of our Aurora bungalow's sunroom, the morning light filtering through lace curtains, casting soft shadows on my easel. The familiar hum of the coffee maker filled the air as I tapped into the family's Google Photos album, hoping to find comfort in old memories of Daniel's childhood sketches. Instead, my breath caught every photo of me, from holiday gatherings to Daniel's graduation, was gone. Karen had replaced them with sleek images of her modern life, captioned with biting remarks, "Time to move on from outdated traditions." My fingers trembled, the sting of erasure sharper than her words at dinner. Those photos were my proof, my years of sacrifice, late nights teaching Daniel to dream, saving for his future now, wiped away like a smudged canvas. George shuffled in, his gray hair tousled, offering a mug of coffee, his eyes avoiding mine. I showed him the screen, my voice steady despite the ache. He frowned, muttering about a glitch, but I saw the doubt in his hunched shoulders, his reluctance to face Karen's cruelty. I couldn't let it go. This wasn't just a digital album, was my place in our family, stolen. I dialed Martha Evans, my friend and a retired lawyer, her sharp voice a lifeline as I recounted the deleted photos. She invited me over, promising to dig deeper, her tone fierce with indignation. As I hung up, the sunroom's warmth felt hollow, my resolve hardening like dried paint. Martha's garden, fragrant with blooming lavender, was a stark contrast to my churning thoughts. She poured tea, her silver bracelet glinting as she listened. She'd heard whispers at a neighborhood book club. Club Kren had been telling friends I was clinging to the past, too frail to guide Daniel's family. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd imagined. Karen wasn't just erasing digital memories, she was rewriting my role, painting me as irrelevant. Martha's eyes narrowed, recounting how Karen had asked about my health at a recent gathering, planting seeds of doubt. My chest tightened, the pain of being sidelined, mingling with memories of Daniel's childhood. When I'd framed his first drawing, proud of his spark, had he forgotten? I walked home, the ring box in my pocket, a quiet anchor. George was in the garage tinkering with an old radio, his way of avoiding conflict. I didn't press him. His silence at dinner still stung, but I sensed a crack in his passivity. Back in the sunroom, I opened my tablet again, checking the album's edit history. Karen's name appeared on every deletion, her captions deliberate, mocking my old-fashioned values, my love for family dinners, hand-painted gifts, the traditions I'd passed to Daniel. The evidence was clear, but doubt gnawed. Confronting her could push Daniel further away. I recalled the moment from his wedding, Karen's forced smile as I gave her my mother's ceramic vase, her eyes cold, as if my legacy was a burden. Martha called back, her voice urgent. She'd spoken to a neighbor, Tom Bradley, who'd overheard Karen at a coffee shop, boasting about modernizing the family image. The pieces clicked. Karen's campaign wasn't just personal, it was systematic, a bid to erase my influence. My artist's eye, trained to spot patterns, saw her strategy: discredit me, isolate me, make Daniel see me as a relic. The sunroom's light dimmed as clouds passed, mirroring my shift from hurt to determination. I wasn't just fighting for photos. I was fighting for my place, for the love I'd poured into Daniel, for the vows George and I still held. I started a new sketch on my easel, lines sharp and deliberate, channeling my anger. Karen thought she could paint me out, but I'd taught students to create through adversity. I'd use that now, not to destroy, but to reclaim. George wandered in, noticing my focus. "What's next, Eleanor?" he asked, his voice softer, a hint of resolve breaking through. I didn't answer, but the ring box in my pocket felt heavier, a reminder of what I'd protect. Karen's deletions were a declaration of war, and I'd meet her with the precision of an artist who knows every stroke counts. The ache of Daniel's silence lingered, his absence at dinner, a wound that hadn't healed. I wondered if he'd seen the album, if he'd noticed me gone. The thought twisted, but I pushed it aside, focusing on Martha's promise to investigate. Karen underestimated me, thinking age dulled my edge. She was wrong. My years teaching art had honed my ability to see truth in chaos, to find beauty in struggle. I'd start with the album, but this was bigger, a battle for my legacy, my family, my worth. As I closed the tablet, the sunroom's shadows lengthened, the air heavy with purpose. Martha's words echoed, "Your story deserves to be told." I'd make sure it was, not with tears, but with strategy. The ring box, warm in my hand, was my vow to fight, to prove my strength wasn't weakness. Karen's next move would reveal more, and I'd be ready, watching, planning, like an artist waiting for the perfect light. I stepped into the community art gallery in Aurora, the faint smell of acrylic paint and polished wood greeting me as I powered up a public computer in the corner. The gallery's high ceilings echoed with distant chatter from a children's art class, their laughter a sharp contrast to the weight in my chest. I opened a local news website, my fingers steady on the mouse, searching for clues about Karen's campaign to erase me. A draft article popped up, not yet published, titled "Aging Out: When Tradition Clashes with Progress." My breath hitched. My name was there, painted as a confused, reclusive woman whose outdated values stifled her son's modern family. The byline linked to a journalist Karen knew from her PR firm, a connection too neat to be coincidence. I clicked through the site, my artist's eye-catching details. The article cited family sources claiming I was forgetful, out of touch, a burden. The words burned, each one a betrayal of the years I'd spent nurturing Daniel's dreams, teaching him to see beauty in the world. I recalled his proud grin when I hung his first painting here in this gallery, a memory now tainted by Karen's lies. A neighbor, Tom Bradley, ambled over, his weathered face lit with recognition. He leaned close, voice low, saying he'd overheard Karen at a local coffee shop, boasting to a friend about rebranding our family to exclude my influence. His words were a spark, igniting a fire I hadn't known I carried. Tom's revelation wasn't just gossip, it was evidence of Karen's deliberate plan. He recounted her smug tone, how she'd laughed about convincing Daniel I was too old to matter. My hands clenched, the gallery's bright lights suddenly stark, exposing the depth of her betrayal. I thanked Tom, my voice calm but laced with steel, and returned to the computer. A quick search revealed Karen's LinkedIn profile, updated recently with a promotion at her PR firm, a firm tied to the same news outlet. The pieces fit. Karen wasn't just spreading rumors, she was orchestrating a public smear to cement her control over Daniel's life, sidelining me as irrelevant. I stood, pacing the gallery's hardwood floor, the vibrant paintings on the walls, a reminder of the legacy I'd built. George had stayed home, still wrestling with his hesitation from the dinner, but I felt his absence keenly. His silence then, and even now, cut deep, amplifying my fear of losing not just Daniel but our shared life. Yet Tom's words fueled a shift in me from hurt to a fierce clarity. Karen thought she could erase me, but I'd taught students to fight for their art, to stand firm. I'd do the same, using her own tactics against her. I pulled out my phone, texting Martha about the article. Her reply was swift. "That's defamation. We'll nail her." Her confidence steadied me, but doubt lingered. Would Daniel believe the article, see me as the frail relic Karen painted? I pushed the thought aside, focusing on the screen, The article's draft had a comment from the journalist, noting insistence on rushing publication. It was a mistake, a crack in her armor, and I'd exploit it. I saved a screenshot, my fingers moving with purpose. The gallery's hum fading as I honed in on my next step. Tom lingered, offering more details. Karen had met the journalist at the coffee shop, passing a notebook with talking points about my supposed decline. His account was vivid, his outrage mirroring mine. I nodded, grateful for his loyalty, but my mind raced. Karen's campaign wasn't just personal, it was a performance, a bid to rewrite our family's story. I recalled a moment from Daniel's college graduation, when Karen had brushed off my gift of a hand-painted frame. Her smile tight, as if my traditions were a nuisance. Now, her disdain was a weapon, aimed at my place in Daniel's heart. I left the gallery, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the parking lot. The ring box in my coat pocket pressed against my side, a quiet reminder of the vows George and I had kept, the family we'd built. Karen's article wasn't just an attack, it was a declaration that I didn't belong. But I'd spent decades teaching others to create, to endure, and I wouldn't let her paint me out. Martha's text buzzed again, suggesting we meet Lisa Harper, a librarian who might have more on Karen's moves. My resolve solidified, a canvas taking shape in my mind. Karen's next mistake would cost her, and I'd be there to catch it. The gallery's paintings lingered in my thoughts, each one a story of struggle and triumph. I wasn't just fighting for myself, I was fighting for the legacy I'd built, for the love I'd given Daniel, for the bond George and I still held. Karen underestimated me, thinking age dulled my edge. She was wrong. My years had taught me to see through chaos, to find truth in details. I'd use that now, not to destroy, but to reclaim. As I drove home, the screenshot on my phone felt like a weapon, one I'd wield with precision. I unlocked the attic door of our Aurora bungalow, the creak of the hinges cutting through the stillness of the late afternoon, and climbed the narrow stairs to a dusty trunk. The attic's musty air clung to me as I opened the trunk, revealing a sketchbook filled with Daniel's childhood, drawings swirling colors from nights I'd spent teaching him to dream big. My fingers lingered on a faded sketch of our old Nebraska oak tree, but I wasn't here for nostalgia. I was searching for answers, driven by Martha's text about meeting Lisa Harper, who might know more about Karen's schemes. As I sifted through old papers, my phone buzzed with a notification from our family group chat. I opened it, and my heart stopped. A scanned journal entry, supposedly mine, filled with disjointed ramblings about forgetting names and losing track of time, shared by Karen with a note, concerned about her health. The words on the screen weren't mine. Every shaky sentence was a forgery, crafted to paint me as unhinged. My hands gripped the phone, the attic's dim light casting jagged shadows across the sketchbook. I read the entry again, each line a stab at my dignity, suggesting I was too frail to be part of Daniel's life. George clomped up the stairs, his work boots heavy on the wood, and peered at the screen over my shoulder. "That's not you," he said, his voice low but sharp, a crack in his usual hesitation. His frown deepened, the first sign he was questioning Karen's actions, and it steadied me, like a brush finding the right stroke. I descended to the living room, the sketchbook tucked under my arm, and called Lisa Harper, the librarian who'd known me from my teaching days. Her voice was warm but urgent as we arranged to meet at the library. I drove there, the late afternoon sun glinting off the windshield. The ring box in my coat pocket a quiet reminder of what I was fighting for. The library's glass doors reflected my determined stride as I entered, the hum of fluorescent lights and the scent of old books grounding me. Lisa greeted me at the counter, her glasses slipping down her nose, and led me to a quiet corner. She confided that Karen had visited recently, asking about my borrowing records, hinting I was confused and needed care. Lisa's loyalty shone through. She'd refused to share details, but Karen's questions revealed a chilling plan to build a case against my sanity. I showed Lisa the WhatsApp message, my voice steady as I explained the forged journal. Her eyes widened, and she pulled up the library's visitor log on her computer, confirming Karen's visit the previous week. The log noted Karen's request for health-related books on memory loss, a calculated move to bolster her lies. My chest tightened, not just from the betrayal but from the fear that Daniel might believe this. I recalled his childhood, when he'd run to me with every scraped knee, trusting my strength. Now, Karen was stealing that trust, and George's earlier silence had let it fester. But his words in the attic, "That's not you," echoed, a spark of hope that he was finally seeing the truth. Lisa promised to keep an eye out for more of Karen's moves, her tone fierce with indignation. I thanked her, my fingers brushing the sketchbook, its pages a testament to the bond I'd built with Daniel. As I left the library, the evening air cooled against my skin. I felt a shift to not just anger, but a calculated focus. Karen's forgery wasn't a random act. It was a step to declare me incompetent, to push me out of our family's story. I drove home, the ring box pressing against my side, its weight a vow to fight back. George was waiting in the kitchen, his usual coffee replaced with a glass of water, his eyes meeting mine with a new resolve. "We need to stop her," he said, his voice firm, and I nodded. Feeling our bond tighten, I sat at the kitchen table, opening the sketchbook to a drawing of Daniel's, a house with a bright sun overhead. The memory hurt his small hand in mine, his dreams I'd nurtured. Karen's forged journal was a weapon, but I'd turn it against her. I texted Martha, sending her the WhatsApp screenshot, and she replied instantly, "This is evidence. Let's set a trap." Her words fueled me, but doubt lingered. Would confronting Karen cost me Daniel's love? I pushed it aside, my artist's instincts kicking in, seeing patterns in her lies. Karen thought she could erase me, but I'd taught students to create through chaos. I'd do the same now, with precision and purpose. The kitchen clock ticked, its rhythm steadying my resolve. George sat beside me, his hand brushing mine, a silent promise to stand with me. The forged journal was Karen's mistake, a crack in her facade, and I'd exploit it. Martha's trap would need careful planning, something to catch Karen off guard. As I closed the sketchbook, the ring box in my pocket felt like a talisman, a reminder of the love and sacrifices I'd protect. Karen's next move would reveal more, and I'd be ready, watching, waiting, like an artist poised for the perfect moment to strike. I pressed the play button on the Google Nest speaker in our Aurora living room, its sleek black surface catching the soft glow of a table lamp as Karen's voice filled the air. The recording, captured by chance when I'd left the device on after a music playlist, was crystal clear. Karen, on a phone call, boasted about paying a local journalist to publish lies about my mental decline. "It's done," she said, her tone smug. "The article will make sure she's out of our way." My fingers tightened around the speaker, the words a fresh wound, cutting deeper than her forged journal. This wasn't just a smear, it was a paid betrayal, designed to strip me of my place in Daniel's life. George sat across from me on the couch, his usual coffee mug untouched, his eyes narrowing as the recording played. "She's gone too far," he muttered, his voice thick with anger, a shift from his earlier hesitance that sent a surge of relief through me. I paused the speaker, the silence heavy, and met his gaze. His support, finally firm, felt like a lifeline, but the pain of Karen's scheme lingered, a reminder of Daniel's silence. I called Martha, my voice steady as I shared the recording, and she suggested meeting her book club, a group of sharp women including Susan Carter, a retired accountant with a knack for uncovering secrets. I agreed, slipping the speaker's USB drive into my purse, the ring box already there, a quiet vow to protect our family's legacy. Martha's book club met at her cozy den, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with the faint crackle of a fireplace. Susan, her glasses perched low, listened as I played the recording, her lips pursing at Karen's words. She pulled out her laptop, fingers flying as she cross-referenced Karen's bank transactions through a Venmo account linked to her PR firm. Within minutes, Susan confirmed a payment to the journalist, time-stamped the same day Karen's call was recorded. The evidence was undeniable, a digital trail of her deceit. My chest tightened, not just from the betrayal but from the fear that Daniel might still defend her, blind to her manipulation. The women in the room leaned in, their faces a mix of outrage and resolve. Susan's voice was calm but fierce. "This is fraught, plain and simple." Martha nodded, sketching out a plan to use the recording and payment proof to confront Karen legally. I clutched the ring box in my pocket, its velvet grounding me as I recalled Daniel's childhood, when I'd stayed up late helping him with school projects, believing in his dreams. Now, Karen was turning those memories into a narrative of weakness. George, who'd driven me to Martha's, reached for my hand, his grip steady, a silent promise that he was all in. The shift in him, from passive to protective, fueled my resolve. But doubt not would this evidence push Daniel away for good. I left Martha's den, the evening chill biting as I stepped onto her porch. Susan had emailed me the Venmo transaction details, a second piece of evidence to bolster the recording. The fireplace's warmth lingered in my mind, a contrast to the cold reality of Karen's actions. I thought of the community art gallery, where my students' paintings still hung, a testament to my life's work. Karen wanted to erase that, to paint me as a fading relic, but this recording was my counterstroke, a bold line on a canvas I'd reclaim. George, walking beside me, spoke up. "We'll make this right, together." His words, simple but firm, were a balm, easing the ache of Daniel's absence. Back home, I replayed the recording, Karen's voice, a stark reminder of her betrayal. The Google Nest, a gift from Daniel for our anniversary, had become my weapon. Its accidental capture, a stroke of luck. I saved the audio file to my phone, my fingers moving with precision, like sketching a portrait. Martha's plan to set a trap was taking shape, but I needed more, something to force Karen's hand. Susan's email buzzed through, suggesting we traced the journalist's other contacts to see if Karen had more allies. The idea sparked a new focus, my artist's instincts honing in on the details of her scheme. Karen thought she could control the narrative, but I'd spent decades teaching others to create their own stories. As I sat at our dining table, George brought me a glass of water, his eyes meeting mine with the determination I hadn't seen in years. The ring box rested beside me, a symbol of the vows we'd kept, the family we'd built. Karen's payment to the journalist wasn't just a bribe, it was proof of her desperation to erase me. I recalled a moment from Daniel's wedding, when Karen had dismissed my toast about family traditions, her smile tight, as if my words were a threat. Now, I saw her fear of losing control, of my influence over Daniel. The recording changed everything, but the cost weighed heavy. Would Daniel see the truth? Or would he cling to Karen's toggleable? I slid my Fitbit off my wrist and placed it on the kitchen counter of our Aurora home, the morning sun glinting off its sleek screen as I opened the synced app on my phone. The data caught my eye: irregular sleep patterns, missed steps, erratic heart rates, painting a picture of someone disoriented, frail. My pulse quickened. I hadn't missed a step in weeks, my daily walks a ritual as steady as my brush strokes. Karen had access to the app, a gift from Daniel to keep me active. And now I saw her handiwork, manipulated data to fake my decline. The betrayal stung, a fresh wound over the scars of her lies. Each false metric a calculated jab at my independence. George leaned over the counter, his gray eyes narrowing as he saw the tampered stats. "She's trying to bury you," he said, his voice low but fierce, the anger in it a far cry from his earlier silence. His hand grazed mine, a spark of solidarity that steadied me. I texted Martha, attaching a screenshot of the Fitbit app's logs, my fingers moving with precision. She replied instantly, urging me to bring the evidence to a dinner we'd planned at Daniel's house, a chance to watch Karen closely. I nodded to myself, the kitchen's warm light sharpening my focus, the ring box in my pocket a quiet anchor. We arrived at Daniel's suburban home, the scent of pot roast, my old recipe, filling the air, a bitter reminder of family Sundays, now tainted. Karen greeted us, her smile tight, her eyes darting to my wrist, bare without the Fitbit. I'd left it behind, deliberately, a trap to gauge her reaction. As we sat at the dining table, George kept close, his posture protective, a shift that made my heart ache with gratitude. Martha, invited as a family friend, engaged Karen in small talk, her lawyer's cunning hidden behind a warm smile. I watched Karen's hands, noticing her quick glance at her phone, likely checking the Fitbit app, her fingers twitching when no new data appeared. During dessert, Martha steered the conversation to health trackers, her tone casual but pointed. "They're so easy to hack," she said, eyeing Karen, who stiffened, her fork pausing midair. I chimed in, mentioning odd patterns in my app, my voice calm but deliberate, watching Karen's face pale. George backed me up, his tone firm. "Someone's been messing with it." The room grew quiet, Daniel's eyes flickering between us, confusion etching his face. Karen recovered quickly, laughing it off, but her unease was palpable, a crack in her polished facade. Back home, I checked the Fitbit app's back-end logs, accessed through a support feature I'd learned about online. The data confirmed my suspicions. Karen had logged in repeatedly, altering sleep and step counts over months to build a case of my supposed frailty. The logs were a digital fingerprint, undeniable proof of her manipulation. My chest tightened, not just from her audacity, but from the fear that Daniel might believe her lies, see me as the weak mother she claimed I'd raised. I recalled his childhood, teaching him to ride a bike, cheering his small victories moments. Karen was erasing with every falsified metric. I sent the logs to Susan Carter, who'd promised to dig deeper into Karen's financial trail. Her reply came fast. She'd found a pattern of small payments to a tech consultant, likely hired to manipulate the app. The evidence piled up, each piece a stroke on a canvas I was reclaiming. George sat beside me at our kitchen table, his usual coffee, replaced with tea, a sign of his full commitment. "We'll end this," he said, his voice steady, and I felt our bond tighten. A partnership forged through years of quiet love, now roaring to life. The dinner had been a test, and Karen's reaction confirmed her guilt. Martha called later, recounting Karen's nervous muttering about fixing the narrative as she left the dining room. The memory of Daniel's confusion at the table lingered, a pang of loss for the son who'd once trusted me implicitly. Yet my resolve grew sharper, honed by years of teaching students to create through adversity. Karen thought she could paint me as fragile, but I'd use her own tools against her. The Fitbit, a symbol of care from Daniel, had become her weapon. Now mine. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the kitchen, I felt a surge of clarity. Susan's findings and the Fitbit logs were a turning point, but I needed more to unravel Karen's full scheme. Martha suggested we look into her brother, a shadowy figure who might be pulling strings. The ring box in my pocket pressed against my side, a reminder of the vows George and I had kept, the family we'd built. Karen's manipulation was a desperate bid to control us, but I'd spent a lifetime crafting beauty from chaos. I'd strike next with the precision of an artist. Waiting for her to slip again, I flipped open a worn address book on the oak desk in our Aurora study. The faint creak of the chair beneath me blending with the distant hum of a lawnmower outside. My fingers traced the faded ink of an old contact. Karen's estranged brother, Michael Wheeler, a name Martha had flagged as a potential key to her motives. I dialed his number, the phone's cool plastic pressed to my ear, and waited as it rang. His voice, gruff but cautious, answered, and I introduced myself, mentioning our family's recent tensions without revealing my full hand. He hesitated, then agreed to meet at a quiet diner on Colfax Avenue, his tone hinting at secrets he'd kept buried. The ring box in my pocket felt heavier, a reminder of the stakes as I prepared to dig into Karen's past. The diner's neon sign flickered in the evening dusk, its vinyl booths and coffee-stained counters a stark contrast to the polished lies. Karen spun. Michael sat across from me, his weathered face etched with unease, his hands fidgeting with a napkin. I asked about Karen's childhood, probing gently, and he revealed a wound that cut deep. Their mother had abandoned them when Karen was 10, leaving her to fend for herself emotionally. "She's been controlling everything since," he said, his voice low, "to keep anyone from leaving her again." My breath caught. This wasn't just manipulation. It was a desperate bid to rewrite her past by controlling our family. The revelation shifted my view, blending anger with a flicker of pity. But my resolve hardened like a finished canvas. George, who'd insisted on coming, sat beside me, his presence steady, his eyes locked on Michael. He spoke up, his voice firm. "She's targeting my wife to prove a point." Michael nodded, admitting Karen had called him weeks ago, asking for help to manage our family's image. Offering him money to back her lies about my mental state, he'd refused, but her persistence chilled him. My hands clenched under the table, the diner's clatter of dishes fading as I processed the depth of her obsession. This wasn't just about MIT, it was about her fear of abandonment, projected onto Daniel, onto us. I pulled out my phone, showing Michael the Fitbit logs from the app, the tampered data, a stark contrast to my steady walks. He frowned, recognizing Karen's tactics from their childhood, when she'd manipulated stories to gain control. He handed me a crumpled letter, one Karen had sent him years ago, begging him to fix their family's reputation after their mother left. The letter was a new piece of evidence, its pleading tone revealing her deep-seated need to dominate. My chest tightened, not just from her betrayal but from the realization that Daniel, caught in her orbit, might never see her truth without a push. We left the diner, the cool night air sharp against my skin. George gripped my hand, his silence replaced by a fierce determination. "We're ending this, together." His words, simple but unwavering, fueled my drive. I texted Martha, sharing Michael's story and the letter, and she replied with a plan to meet David Miller, a lawyer who could turn our evidence into action. The diner's neon glow lingered in my mind, a beacon of clarity in the chaos Karen had sown. I recalled Daniel's childhood, his laughter as we painted together, now overshadowed by Karen's control. Her brother's words painted a picture of her pain, but it didn't excuse her actions, it explained them. Back in our study, I spread the letter on the desk, its creases worn but legible. Michael's story was a window into Karen's motives, but it also raised the stakes. Her need to control wasn't just personal, it was pathological, rooted in a wound she'd never healed. The ring box, tucked in my coat, pressed against my side, a symbol of the love I'd fought for, the family I'd built. George sat beside me, his hand on my shoulder, a partner now fully in the fight. I thought of the community gallery, where my students' art still hung, a testament to my strength. Karen wanted to erase that, but I'd use her own past against her, not with cruelty, but with precision. Martha called, her voice sharp with purpose. David can file a defamation suit with this. The letter and Michael's testimony were our weapons, but doubt lingered. Would Daniel see Karen's pain as an excuse, or would he finally see her manipulation? My artist's instincts, honed over decades, saw the pattern. Karen's control was her shield, but it was cracking. I'd spent years teaching others to create through pain, and now I'd do the same, crafting a plan to expose her. The night grew quiet, the lawnmower's hum long gone, leaving only the steady rhythm of my resolve. Karen's next move would be her last mistake, and I'd be ready. Waiting for the moment to strike, I pulled a manila envelope from my purse and set it on the picnic table at the neighborhood barbecue in Aurora. The smoky aroma of grilled burgers mingling with the chatter of neighbors under a string of fairy lights. The envelope, handed to me by David Miller earlier that day, contained a legal summons, its crisp pages detailing Karen's defamation, every lie, from the forged journal to the paid journalist. I adjusted the ring box in my pocket, my fingers brushing its velvet, and scanned the crowd. Karen stood by the grill, laughing with Daniel, her confidence a mask I was about to shatter. Tonight, her lies would face the light, and I was ready to deliver the blow. George stood beside me, his hand steady on my shoulder, his eyes locked on Karen, with a resolve that mirrored my own. The barbecue's warmth, with kids running across the grass and music humming softly, felt deceptively festive, a stage for the confrontation Martha had planned. She'd arrived early, mingling with neighbors, her lawyer's poise hiding the strategy we'd honed with David. I caught Daniel's eye across the lawn, his smile faltering as he noticed my purposeful stride. The weight of the envelope grounded me, each step a reclaiming of the years Karen had tried to erase, years of teaching Daniel to dream, of building a family now under siege. I approached Karen, the envelope in hand, and her laughter stopped as I spoke. My voice clear above the crowd's murmur. "This is for you." I handed her the summons, the paper stuck against her manicured nails. Her eyes widened, scanning the document, her composure cracking as neighbors turned to watch. "You thought you could bury me," I said, my tone even but sharp. "But your lies end here." The crowd hushed, the sizzle of the grill the only sound as Karen stammered, claiming it was a misunderstanding. George stepped forward, his voice firm. "We have proof, your voice, your payments, your brother's words." Her face paled, the fairy lights casting shadows that deepened her panic. Martha joined us, her presence commanding as she addressed the crowd, explaining Karen's campaign, the doctored photos, the fake journal, the paid article, the tampered Fitbit. Neighbors gasped, their whispers a tide of disbelief. Daniel stood, frozen, his eyes darting between Karen and me, the summons in her hand a truth he couldn't ignore. I pulled the ring box from my pocket and placed it in his hands, my voice steady. "This is who we are, your father and I, the family we built. Choose what matters." The box, warm from my touch, held our vows, our sacrifices, a legacy Karen couldn't erase. Karen's voice rose, defensive, accusing me of exaggerating, but Susan Carter stepped forward, her accountant's precision cutting through. "I traced your payments to the journalist and the tech consultant. It's all here." She held up a printed ledger, the second piece of evidence, its numbers a damning record of Karen's schemes. The crowd's murmurs grew, neighbors who'd once believed Karen's lies now turning away. Daniel's hands tightened around the ring box, his face a storm of confusion and dawning realization. I saw the boy I'd raised, the one who'd trusted my strength, now wrestling with the truth of his wife's betrayal. The barbecue's lights flickered, casting a glow on Karen's faltering mask. She tried to rally, claiming I was too old to understand her modern ways, but her words fell flat, drowned by the weight of evidence. George's hand found mine, his grip a silent vow, a contrast to his silence months ago. I recalled a moment from Daniel's childhood, when he'd given me a clumsy painting. His pride, my treasure and now Karen's lies, threatened that bond. But the summons, the ledger, and the ring box were my counterstroke. A canvas painted with truth, Martha whispered to me, her voice low. David says the case is airtight. The legal path was set, but my heart ached for Daniel, caught in the crossfire. I'd fought for my dignity, but the cost loomed. His love, his trust, might fracture under this weight. As we left the barbecue, the crowd's whispers followed. A community awakened to Karen's deceit. The ring box, now in Daniel's hands, was a challenge. To see the family we'd built, to choose truth over lies. Karen's downfall was near, but the final reckoning would come in court, where every stroke of her deception would be laid bare. The night air was cool, the fairy lights fading behind us as George and I walked home. The envelope, now empty, had done its work, but doubt lingered. Would Daniel stand with us, or cling to Karen's fading narrative? My artist's eye, trained to see beauty in struggle, saw the path ahead, a courtroom, a final stand. Karen had underestimated me, thinking age dulled my edge. She was wrong. I'd spent decades crafting stories through art, and now I'd finish hers, with the precision of a master's final stroke. I stood at the podium in the Aurora courthouse. The polished wood cool under my fingers as I opened the ring box and placed it before me. Its silver bands glinting under the fluorescent lights. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs, the air thick with anticipation, as I prepared to deliver my statement. Karen sat across the room, her face pale, her eyes avoiding mine, while Daniel sat beside her, his hands clenched. The ring box I'd given him at the barbecue now, a weight in his pocket. George's hand brushed mine, his presence a steady anchor, as David Miller nodded from the counsel table, signaling the judge was ready. My voice, clear and unwavering, carried the truth I'd fought to reclaim, a final stroke on a canvas torn by betrayal. I recounted the Evitenskeren's doctored photos, her forged journal, the paid journalist, the tampered Fitbit, her brother's testimony, each piece a deliberate lie to paint me as frail, irrelevant. The judge leaned forward, her gaze sharp as I revealed the first bombshell. Karen's obsession with control, rooted in her mother's abandonment, uncovered through Michael's letter. She feared losing Daniel, I said, my tone measured, so she tried to erase me, to rewrite our family's story. The courtroom stilled, Karen's head bowing, her mask shattered. I held up a childhood drawing of Daniel's, a vibrant sketch of our family home, the second piece of evidence. This is what I gave him: love, strength, roots. She called it weakness, but it's the foundation he stands on. Karen's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled, her eyes fixed on me. I continued, addressing Daniel directly. You let her lies blind you, choosing her modern promises over the values we built. His face crumpled, and he spoke, his voice breaking. I ignored what mattered, chasing her vision instead. The admission hit like a thunderclap, the courtroom's silence deafening. Karen's shoulders shook, her composure gone as she whispered an apology. Her voice, barely audible, admitting her fear of abandonment, drove her to control us all. The judge's gavel fell, ruling in my favor, ordering Karen to retract her lies publicly and pay damages. The victory was mine, but the cost was etched in Daniel's eyes. Our bond, fractured, might never heal. George squeezed my hand, his warmth a reminder of the love we'd preserved. Martha, Susan, and Lisa sat in the gallery, their nods a testament to the community that had rallied behind me. I closed the ring box, its weight a symbol of the legacy I'd defended, not just for me, but for the family we'd built. Karen's defeat was public, her retraction ordered, but Daniel's confession lingered, a wound deeper than her lies. As we left the courtroom, the morning sun filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the marble floor. I felt no triumph, only a quiet clarity, a canvas complete but scarred. The fight was over, but the future Daniel's choice, our family's path remained uncertain. Outside, I paused on the courthouse steps, the ring box back in my pocket, its presence, a quiet vow. I looked back on the journey, Each step a battle against Karen's lies. From the sting of her insult at that dinner, to the Google Nest's damning recording, the Fitbit's falsified data, and Michael's painful truth, I'd walked through betrayal, armed with evidence and allies, to reclaim my place. The lesson wasn't about winning, it was colder, truer. Family isn't owed loyalty, it's earned through truth, and when it's broken, you rebuild your worth alone. For those betrayed in their own homes, this truth demands action. Gather your proof, stand firm, and let go of those who choose lies over love. It's not forgiveness, it's survival, a path to peace, through clarity. To you, watching this unfold, I say, if your family's love turns to doubt, don't beg for their trust. Build your own strength, piece by piece, until their shadows can't touch you. I've walked that road, and it's led me here, whole but changed. My story is yours if you choose to fight. If this series moved you, subscribe to our channel for more stories of truth and resilience. We're just getting started.